Hello and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete, and we are joined by the Dr. Alison J. Good afternoon to you.
Hi there.
Listen, great to have you on the show. We've had a bit of a pre-chat. Like I say, I think this is going to go somewhere beautiful. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. So thank you so much for coming on. It's always
That's
fun.
my joy to be here with you. I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes too.
It's going to be fun. So to give everyone a bit of a background, so for more than 25 years, Dr. Alison J.K. has practiced as a mind-body energy healer, founder of the Vibrational Upgrade System, and working in yoga, meditation, qigong, energy medicine, mind-body fitness, longevity, and holistic health, with a specialization in the chakra system. Considered one of the leading experts in her field, she has taught around the world and has written 3 books: the award-winning What If There's Nothing Wrong?, Vibrational Upgrade, A Conspiracy for Your Bliss, Easing Humanity's Evolutionary Transition, Reasonable Dragons, How to Activate the Field of Possibility, Where Logical Magic is the New Normal, and her latest masterpiece, The Dragon Master Creatrix, Conversations with a Female Spiritual Teacher for These New Times. Alison, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on. Thank you so much. That's a title and a half. I'm loving it. This is great.
Which one's the title? The and a half.
Well, everything. I think it's just beautiful. So tell me, who are you? What do you do? How do you see yourself?
So I just stepped away after our initial pre-chat before going into recording to kind of take in your different version of a podcast and just being able to talk freely, which is a treat for me because it's not the formula of how did I get started doing this, what's my background, all of that, my mission. And I just want to talk, like you said. So who am I? I'm somebody who's different. I tend to have an interesting time between my innate humility with the connection that I have and what it allows me to do. And then being able to market that as a person who owns a business. So this connection I have is really to source, to the divine. Like I grew up going in the woods with my older brother and just feeling connected to everything. And that's never left me. And when I go over to the UK, one of the things that I teach is the Om. And so like I have a particular affinity with the silence and the expansiveness that you can feel when not having to interact like at an ego mind level or a personality level, but being able to just bring in more divine presence and be with that and connect there. And so because I do that, I seem to be like 10 years ahead of like what's happening in the masses. And that too is an interesting perspective to market from, because a lot of the times it just goes swing right over people's heads. Like, what did she say? But I mean, so I have had the nickname given to me from people who've worked the closest with me as my students getting trained in the system I developed, Vibrational Upgrade. They have labeled me a Maverick. I know I have a lot of courage. I know that I just went through an expression to my family during this holiday time of my family of origin. I don't want to be the voice of being said what needs to be said. I don't want to play that role anymore. My family is really genuine, really loving, a lot of sensitive folks in it, and not wanting to disrupt the harmony. And so, like, I remember when my mom was going through chemo and I had gone back to teaching. I taught in Asia in the international school system for 10 years. And in between that, in year 5, I came back to the States because my mom had gotten a diagnosis of a brain tumor. And I had been using energy medicine for about 15 years. And that was in great part why I had moved. I had accepted a job in Asia as opposed to like Brazil or the Middle East. I had gotten job offers around the world, and I went there because I understood that they are the seat of understanding how energy and consciousness work and holistic health and that approach. Because I had my first major was psychology, and that didn't cut it when I was wanting to have the answer of how do we be the happiest, most thriving versions of ourselves. So from there on in, I've been looking at holistic mind, body, spirit approaches to reaching human potential, basically.
Mm.
So I came back, like, for example, in the time I came back to treat my mom with the energy medicine I had learned, and we got a brain tumor wiped off of her, out of her head and off the MRI. And the doctor had said, this is a miracle, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And I remember looking at him and thinking, you know, the first of the 5 energy medicine modalities I learned is from your native country. He was Indian. And he was standing there in a white coat as a Western doc saying that to me. And so during the time later, a couple of years later, I don't even remember the time frame right now, it doesn't matter, but I remember I had already returned. So she was okay. I set her up with my local holistic practitioner in Qigong, and then another, my Reiki master actually, and went back to Taiwan to continue my teaching career. And everybody around here in my family waited for me to come back to talk to my dad about a different treatment, taking her off of chemo because something had happened and they threw her on chemo. So like just being this voice of saying what needs to be said, it's required like a certain strength and holding this vision I have for humanity and this understanding I have for the times we're in and what they really mean, what they're really about, and the human potential as opposed to like the struggle paradigm, holding that vision and projecting that out onto reality, that which I've seen and been given from all the experts I interviewed on my own radio show and for 2.5 years with Voice America about 2012 to 2032. In my own consciousness, like in meditation, then how that filled in the gaps. And then I read more in Yogi Bhajan of the yogic culture knew 2012 was a shift from one yuga or era to another. All the astrologers talk about it, Piscean to Aquarian age. And the Mayans knew it was the end of one era to another. And so holding that vision of, like, instead of a suffering version, in order for people to dismantle their personality level self or their ego self and needing crisis, like a diagnosis or a job loss or a divorce or physical, some kind of crisis, to crack the shell of who they've been in day to day and to open up to really recognizing soul in a human body existence. It's different to hold the space of heart first over mind, especially in a culture that believes that external measurements, or, I mean, I say this as an American, even though I've lived as an expat for long extended amounts of time, more than the decade in Asia throughout my life, in a culture that values what's external to us more than the heart or the kindness or the compassion. Like we measure our success based on, productivity. And what do we produce? House, car, kids, house 2,500 square feet, car of a certain nature, and all those measurements externally, and turning it inside out and having it be the mainstream, as opposed to the mainstream being like, how good you look on your Instagram and the external measurements, so that we can have our earth, make it. I believe our consciousness, I'm not the only one obviously saying this, obviously I don't know that it's obvious, our consciousness affects the earth, and she's purging. In great part because there's greater purge we're all going through from 2012 to 2032, but also because, our consciousness affects the earth. We're all connected. It's all connected. And we've been dumping shite onto it, both physically and metaphysically for so long. So I had my first career actually in politics to protect the environment, and ended up doing this work with consciousness because I saw that using my master's in environmental policy in an NGO or in a local EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, whether governmental or an NGO, to protect the environment wasn't going to happen at the time in the late 90s when I was looking at using my master's for it. So I went into classroom teaching using my bachelor's in English Lit with the energy medicine on the side, work in teaching meditation as an answer to, okay, if the fossil fuel industry is too anchored into the market, and not ready to change, and change will happen more one consciousness at a time. This is how I've been doing it. So it takes a lot to hold the space.
I'm curious do you see the way the planet is, the way the humans have reacted in a not a particularly great way? Well, that's a judgment itself, but are we where we're supposed to be, or has this been an egoic field trip that's gotten out of hand?
Both.
Okay.
My first book's title is What If There's Nothing Wrong? And it's basically saying what you just said and what I just said, the bottom line of it's our consciousness that's going to change everything.
Yeah.
And there's egoic resistance for sure.
Yeah. And that's on a global level. Like that's not just that's
Western.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's human. It's ego versus heart, ego versus soul, if you will. And I don't mean to make it sound like a battle, because both serve their purposes and their appropriate tools in certain contexts.
Yeah. But but the potency of each is not equal per se, right?
No.
So if one is the light and one is the dark, well, one is I mean they both have their powers, but yeah, it's
I think we can lighten the ego from everything I've seen from I'm a yoga teacher certified in India and teaching meditation, and those practices in particular really show how to lighten the ego. And so I use energy medicine to speed up the process of meditation and the results and effects of, to clear people's unconscious and subconscious blockages. And then more fresh, vital life force energy or consciousness can get to the conscious mind level. And from there, we make more conscious choices. So I feel like we can bring light to the ego and we can lighten it up. It does have it, what you're saying, I feel like with what you're saying, I'm not sure, I could be misinterpreting, but when you said dark and light, the ego serves a purpose. I mean, it also helps us navigate the physical plane and takes the metaphysical data to a more manageable level with the 5 thresholds on our 5 physical senses, so we don't see everything that's there to be seen, right? So, I mean, and it keeps us out of danger, lions, tigers, and bears, oh my. So it hates the unknown. So it presents that resistance when we go to do something unknown or new or unfamiliar. So, I mean, it's learning, I think, the management of it in its darkness, and then also being able to bring more light to it so it can evolve.
I mean, is there an evolutionary opportunity with the ego, do you think? I mean, it's like, it used to be, just we got to run home so the tiger doesn't get us, but now it's, can it evolve, or has human nature as the conscious form, has it evolved just much faster than the ego itself, do you think?
Wow, what a question. I don't know the answer to that. You're asking what I think. Well, if we look at, like, here I am taking the observer mode that I learned to do in meditation. And I do this a lot with when I see what I'm talking frequently about, what's coming through me frequently. I'm talking a lot about evolution in the last 12 years. And I don't mean genetics. I mean, it's included in there, but that's like one of the least on the list of priorities when I mean evolution. So I feel like the ego is the evolution of the ego is implied in the sheer fact of meditation, that if we have a practice that's over 5,000 years old, that people have used to learn how to evolve beyond the ego mind, is what it's called in meditation, ego mind dominance over our choices and our daily lives and habits and etc., then yeah, the ego can evolve. And I understand that this time, 2012 to 2032, is absolutely about the human race going, like you read my subtitle of my second book, Vibrational Upgrade, A Conspiracy for Your Bliss, that's the title, and Easing Humanity's Evolutionary Transition. My publisher knows my work. He is a recipient, he's purchased, he's a customer. And he's like, you have to have that subtitle because of your mission. So if we look at that, it's implied that evolution's happening.
Do people get you? And I mean that very respectfully, by the way. Please don't take it the wrong way.
No. That's what I meant when I said, like, a lot of the times it can go over people's heads. I mean, but I've made a 6-figure plus living for the last 12 years. So enough people do.
And is that, I mean, do you get to be your true self enough? I mean, and well, how close, well, a better question might be is how close to your true self are you as the form we see today?
What did you just ask there? How close am I to what you see? Is it
your
really
true self is where you are at?
Okay, so I just licked my lips, and this had the same kind of energy I perceived about, and that you may have been talking about when you said I'm interested. You didn't say I'm interested to see where this goes. What did you say? I feel like there's this conversation.
It's, well, I don't know. I feel like this conversation is going to go into somewhere crazy, somewhere special. I don't know. I'm just
That, so whatever you said in the beginning, that was the adjective where it's for this conversation. I feel like it right now, this is part of it. I feel like what I just heard you ask, and where I want to go with it more so, is how much can I be myself and present myself whilst marketing my business and talking about my mission and having clients find me. And that's a really interesting question. And I've been consistently working with that since coming back from Asia and dropping the classroom teaching and administration and taking the energy medicine and mindfulness full time. I can only say what I really feel and think to a select audience. I find myself scaling down what I say, typically.
Yeah.
And some of that's attention span. Some of that you can only capture so much in copy. Some of that's the nature of, digital marketing, social media and email marketing, and the overwhelm people are typically in. And the nature of the beast that I'm talking about, like attempting to get that into like a bullet list. It's like
just
the whole
an email with the whole answer to everything. Perfect.
I once saw this meme years ago, and I used it on my Facebook post. It was a guy in a yogic guru cartoon, not genuine life forms in a photo, sitting in the mountains, and he has a seeker coming up to him and asking, "Can you tell me the secret of life, please?" And so the guru is saying, "Did you see my Facebook page?" I mean, but God bless social media. I mean, and all the, all that it allows us to connect with, and who we connect with because of it. I mean, it's not all bad. I think that the world is changing in part because of social media and so many more voices being heard. And I'm obviously not the only one to say that. And I don't think that it's all bad. It's just us learning how to now deal with that impact and reshape. So, I find that, like, even right before we were getting together, I have this new program I'm launching, and I have these goals. I have this understanding. So in meditations, it came in that this year we really need to be more courageous than ever before. I don't know if than ever before is accurate, but increased courage is needed for us to succeed even more this year. I get that in 2022, there are vast opportunities for thriving for people who are consciously awake and continuing to do this kind of work I'm talking about, where there's discipline and management of the ego mind, and there's bringing forth more of the soul and the heart-based self and letting that lead more. And then those who are in resistance to it or still completely in the material realms and shut down to the holistic aspect of being a human are going to suffer even more. It's not going to be like this golden year. And I see the path getting further. I don't mean to talk about polarity, but I see like the division being further, where there's more and more people who are asking for an awakened, healthy version of humans in the earth, and those who aren't are starting to suffer more. It's kind of like the turning point. So we're going to begin to physicalize the new era, where we're already seeing it, like the way institutions are, whether it's banking, financial, educational, health, they're all going to rearrange in our rearranging so that it's more aligned with what is needed in service to each other, rather than abuse of power, top down, suppression, hierarchy, what we have seen. So personally, individually, for each person to go beyond where we've been before requires courage.
Is it courage or is it acceptance?
Maybe acceptance first, and then acceptance of where you are, like, to acknowledge it honestly, and then courage to move beyond.
It's almost like that zone of genius or zone of connection, right? And the more you connect and the more you see and the more you feel, it's impossible to, once you,
Increasing.
yeah, I think, is there not a natural rising? And that's a wonderful opportunity, that there's a greater connection which allows you to connect further as well yourself. I don't know, it's a niching opportunity in some ways, which actually allowing all this to happen for you, to go deeper in your teachings, to not have to appeal to the masses per se. I don't know, it's just a theorem.
Well, hold on. What do you think about the idea that the masses are now becoming more people who are aware of this?
My and this is where I don't know, because sometimes we get trapped in our own truth chamber, right? In our own.
What a great sentence. We get trapped in our own truth chamber. Can I use that?
Please do. Yeah, it's true though, isn't it? We hear our own echoes. All this is like, well, it must be true, and then you step outside of your own, your own zone, and then you realize that, hold on, I was just talking to myself there.
I love, that's one of the reasons I love. I released my fourth book that when I held up in January of 21 last year, a year now. And it's been great going on this podcast tour all around the world and talking to people and seeing where they're at through what we've just moved through. Yeah. So it's been really great for me to check myself on my own truth chamber. But it's interesting too, there's like this balance, because like I was just talking to one of my closest friends last night, and I was telling her, she's like, don't you have alerts for the weather? And I'm like, I don't even have the local, I'm not supposed to do this, but the people at the phone companies like turned off my Amber Alert. In America, it's, you get alerted if kids are locally missing or something happens. I think that's what it's for. I don't even know what it's for. But what I'm saying is that, like, not having this reality and all of its noise infect me holding the vision that I've been holding. So it's an interesting balance between, like, in my own truth chamber only with no outside input, and like what genuine input to allow in.
Yeah,
that's healthy and helpful, while still observing reality as it is now.
It's because I was sort of almost coming back to what you were saying earlier. We talk about communication, and it's almost like words just get in the way of communication. It's like the true communication is in the silence, or it's in the gap in between the words. And yet we still use these words to actually break up the silence, which the conscious mind says is good. And the unconscious mind says, I wish you would stop talking. I don't know. It's, I'm not quite sure why I felt the need to say that, but I think it's the beauty of silence, right? That's something the conscious mind almost seems to fear, the egoic mind, I should maybe say. I don't know.
I love that you're saying that, because maybe you're saying it when you just said, I don't know why I'm saying that. I can give you a couple of reasons possibly. Like when I returned from Asia, I was having in treating people locally and in a distance. So it was America based, but I was still treating people all over the world remotely. I noticed that as I was more and more in America, my sessions became less and less quiet, or less and less silent. There was more expectation of talk and chatter and intellectual coaching. And I know I would give my clients the option, please understand that I can go further and do more in your behalf, the more silent we are. I teach when I'm training my students who are studying to become or up-leveling vibrational upgrade, they're as themselves as a practitioner with their own clients and hands-on or remotely. I let them know you want to do the same thing. Like, you get more done in the silence, you can move more energy. And then like when I have been on summits or even podcasts here and there, a few where I'll do my energy medicine, the verbal clearings and activations, in the silence is when I get more perceived and I'm able to move more energy. And yet it's weird because people do get uncomfortable in the silence. And it feels like filler. And to find the right words even now to talk about so much of what I'm perceiving, like to find the right words and to have it sound different than what somebody else is saying that could be along the same lines, but it isn't. It's really at times impossible. And I don't think I use the word impossible more than usually once a year at most. Like I haven't used that word in so long. I'm noticing it, impossible.
Why is that?
What, that I don't use that word?
Yeah.
Because I live in the possibilities. I live in the understanding of the more, when I have, and this is a teacher and this is growing up in a household where it was really rewarded to be right and smart. When we know the answer to something, we get that kudos, right? Like the kids would feel great in the classroom when they were right, blah, blah, blah. So we live in that paradigm, but for ourselves to come out of our habits and our routines that aren't helpful or healthy for us, asking questions, not knowing, and allowing oneself to be wrong are key tools. So I am constantly like a spiral or like a flower where I'm always asking like I'm living in this understanding of there is this greater field called the Tao around us, right? Like, and I call it the field of unlimited possibilities. That was in my third book's title, its subtitle you read. And so the Tao, T-A-O, from the Chinese like Qigong practices, is this field that's out here beyond my own personal field, your own personal field. And I understand it to contain life force, as many people understand that. And I wrote about this at the end of my second book, going to a yogic guru in America to ask him the effect of doing so many energy medicine sessions where I'm channeling the light or channeling the energy. What are the effects on me? Because I was feeling more spacey and less grounded and more tired. And so I wanted to ask him, because he was a main teacher bringing yoga from India to the West. He opened the first holistic center and yoga studio or yoga center in America. And I went to him asking him the effects and instead ended up treating him. So in one of the sessions of ending of me treating him, I said, is life force chi or prana the same as soul force? And he said, yeah. And I said, is it the same as, so it's another way to ask it, like the unconditional love force? And he said, yeah. And I understand that unconditional love is in the cellular matrix in between cells. It's the nature of the universe we live in. And love helps things grow. So I live more from there. I don't naturally understand limitations. I help people release them. And I mean, I have spent my whole life like, jumping out of planes, bungee jumping, moving around the planet, just doing stuff that isn't, I guess, focused on impossibilities.
No, it's beautiful. I mean, in the words, I suppose, of Eckhart Tolle, is you just are, you just be, right? Just being there. And that's nothing, that thing is nothing is impossible and everything is the right answer. Beautiful. I'll go back to my previous question, really, is how close to is there who you are and your true self? Is that one and the same, or is it will there always be a shadow or a gap?
So on the deeper level of that question, my sense is that maybe we're finding that gap closing in this new era. And maybe that's a great part of the evolution we're going through. Whereas like, here's an example of that nature. where we might be getting closer. I remember in the beginning years of working with energy medicine and learning about karma. Now, I've spent tens of thousands of dollars training in how to clear karma. It's persnickety. It's not easy. Karma is glumpy. I've heard some people even say karma is going to disappear in this new era. I don't know about that yet. I don't see it yet at all, but like the aspect of having karmic consequences, maybe when we evolve much more. And anyway, I won't go down that road. What I'm talking about right now is in the beginning days of doing energy medicine sessions, I would see people have to die and then reincarnate in order to get out of a pattern. And now, like, I remember my very first client when I came back from Asia, really tall woman, a reverend herself, a really big woman, tall, just big bone, I remember being at the crown of her head at the top of the table and just looking down her body, and it seemed like miles long. And I remember feeling like, oh my God, I'm helping you. I feel like a midwife, like I'm helping you give birth. And I remember noticing, like, after a couple of sessions, I don't know how many, maybe 10, maybe less, maybe more, like, oh my God, we're helping you. You don't even need to reincarnate. We're going to be able to get so much change, and so much change is intended for you by your soul that you don't even need to reincarnate to get that amount of change. We can do it now. And ever since then, I've been seeing that more and more. So I feel like when you say true, when you use the term true self, that's like what, us as souls, us as unconditional loving beings. And that's the gray mist that leaves the body whenever any of us leave our bodies. Is that the true self?
I suppose, yeah. I mean, in this instance, I would. I mean, that's the pure essence of who you are as such.
Yeah. So if that's what you're saying, then I don't know. Maybe that is part of the evolution now, that we get closer and closer to living from that place. I know that it's not easy when the current society is still very much honoring and reactive to fear and problem solving and struggle, to hold the space of unconditional love for humanity can get messy, and it can be very challenging, because it's like, what about when I have to draw boundaries when somebody isn't coming from unconditional love towards me? Well, I mean, so what am I saying there? Is that boundary drawing is something that you don't do as your true self? It's more egoic. I guess so, if I have to deal with somebody else's ego that they've not worked on yet. So because they haven't done their work on their ego, purifying it enough, and they're still coming at me with egoic intentions, I have to draw boundaries to keep myself preserved. So I feel like maybe more of the soul-based living would make it easier for me to be my true self from people around me. My reality is that.
Do you think, I mean, everyone, well, first of all, let me ask, can I ask what your soul values are? Have you ever thought of such a thing? Whether it's, we talk about core values, but to me, that's not deep enough. I talk about soul values. To me, it's the purity of it. Would you know what your soul values are? Does it matter to you?
Well, I think I just espoused one of the key ones is learning to live in unconditional love and possibilities rather than fear and struggle and problems. And another one is do your own work, damn it. Step into more self-mastery. Learn how to manage that ego mind you've been given so that you don't suffer. So is that a soul value? Yeah, be more soulful, be less egoic. Now I sound like I'm like pointing fingers and I have like my nostrils flaring or something with that tone.
Get the wagging finger out next, you know?
Yeah.
God damn it, go be more loving you, you know?
Yes. Damn it.
It's like with my kids, like no matter how much stuff and how much I go through, it's like they can just snap me out of state so quickly. It's like, yeah, they'll just break me in seconds. It's like, they just push all my buttons all at the same time. But it, Yeah, no, it's just, and I find that interesting. I mean, the second part to that then is, I mean, fundamentally, do you think everyone's soul values at their core, they may or may not be operating at that level, but it's still love and connection or joy or whatever those soul values would be? Do you think that is the same for everyone? It's just we're all on a different path or a different place in our journey?
So I'm just right now reflecting back on in my most recent, no, I did it in my third book, Reasonable Dragons, the calibration of frequencies. And I remember being surprised that joyous creation is of a higher vibration than love. Yeah. Joyous creation is a higher vibration frequency of thoughts, frequency behind the thought or the engagement in joyous creation. One's vibrations are higher than engaged in love. So
Is that because creation sometimes involves, it's almost like an exothermic reaction in chemistry, right? It's two or more sources coming together. No?
in that kind of explosion of life.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. That's a great way to put it. Yeah, I love how you see that. So if there's this calibration saying joyous creation, no matter if you're Spanish and living in South America or you're Icelandic living up in the close to the North Pole, if you're engaged in joyous creation, you are going to be a higher vibration, no matter culture, gender, etc. Then there's got to be like a consistency across all souls. And it's, I mean, you can observe it too, like how consistently people who are joyous have better health. And it boosts the immune system. They've done the measurements, scientific, quote unquote, scientifically. Why do I say quote unquote scientifically? Because I think measuring consciousness is subjective, like in the way you even create the tools, the machinery, so I don't mean to knock science, God bless it. It's gotten us really far. But I like a balance between rationalism and heart and intuition, not just all rationalism. We've gotten too far over that swing of the pendulum, in my interesting point of view. So I think then there's a layer, like you're asking, you brought in with your question another direction for me to go with that, which I think is interesting, Pete. Thank you. It's I don't spend a lot of time distinguishing between spirit, soul, and higher self. So in the Hindu yogic culture and in the traditional Chinese culture, they both believe the spirit resides in the heart chakra. When looking at the traditional Chinese, the yin yang culture, the Taoists that created the yin yang and then acupuncture and qigong, the soul is in the lower dantian, or it's in what the yoga culture would call the sacral chakra. So that's saying that's saying higher self, that's saying soul and spirit are different entities. And then in the yogic culture, we learn that above the crown chakra is the higher self. And through that, you connect with your higher self, your more pure, non-egoic guiding self. And then even above that, you connect and have the higher chakras above that to the divine. So the more and more you're connected there, the more pure your guidance is. And the more purified your consciousness is, the more you can access that more purified guidance. So to me, it sounds like at some level in those three, there is individuality or individuation. So whilst we can have a commonality for all soul values at a core, fundamentally, like unconditional love is a great aspiration. And that's what the whole universe works on. It feels like there's also individuation somewhere between soul, higher self, spirit, in that spectrum. And that individuation is, I might have a particular other set of core values that then you can see me engaging in with my mission and what I'm doing in my life that aren't egoic, that are still like almost a part of the soul's dharma to move beyond and move through and evolve and work with and evolve in our lifetimes, each of our lifetimes. So I do this answer a lot, both and. Like, instead of either.
It's becoming a multiple choice answer. It's like, yeah, pick which one suits you. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, the buffet of life.
Well, it's like there's no right answer, right? And was it someone said, the wiser you become, the less you say. It's like, yeah, Go figure, right? You know, you realize there's more than one way to look at it. Are you clear on your purpose? Is there such a thing?
I feel like somewhere along the lines it switched into the word passion, because purpose feels heavy, obligations, responsibility. Passion feels uplifting, like, woo! I want to go out and share this. And like, I have natural inherent talents, like associated with my soul values, so that my passion is natural. If I don't cover it up with conditioning of shoulds and responsibilities, and I allow it to be my guiding force, and I'm heart-led and higher self-led, then my passion naturally needs to happen. I will end up choosing it. So yeah, I know that I say two things of my mission have been, since returning from Asia. One, if people in the West only understood there's a science behind how to work with understanding subtle energy, and then how to work with it in consciousness, and valued more of the invisible, there'd be so much less suffering. And then the other part of the secondary mission has been to professionalize the field of energy medicine. So it's not like energy work, or, you know, let me give it to you for free, even though you don't want it, and throwing it on resistant family members, or going up to somebody in the supermarket and acting like your intuition's like a psychic reader. And you're like, I am seeing this, to a stranger, you know? So like all of the oovy groovy woo woo crazy wonky past behaviors that have been associated with this field, instead it gets understood as a science that it is. And that, like, I just recently saw something that was impressive, and I went into this in great depth in my first book, What If There's Nothing Wrong? You can hear me talking about this with a different tone. So yeah, more my purpose and / passion. More and more doctors in the United States, it's up to the point of between 60 and 70% are admitting they have no idea how to deal with chronic issues. So for me, and again, I talked about that, I wrote the book in 2010. So here's an example of me being 12 years-ish ahead of the curve. I know a lot of other people have been looking at the holistic model for decades, so I don't mean to claim that soul territory. But what I'm saying is that it's only now that the American Medical Association, not even them, but the doctors who are getting trained, are saying there's a dearth of training. We can't work with chronic issues. And that's what I said. And What If There's Nothing Wrong? That Western medicine, particularly in America, is really good at diagnostics and surgery in trauma. And where they fall down is anywhere beyond the tests, because we love our toys and we love our diagnostic tools, therefore, and we love the cool carpentry devices used in surgery because we like quick fixes. But to go into something beyond that, we don't have that here. So that's when the holistic model comes in. That's when dealing with the forces beyond what you can put a Band-Aid on. And God bless the trauma treatment in the US. God bless the surgical capacities, you know, it saved many, many lives. I don't mean to be knocking it in that way, but with chronic issues, it falls down. So that's been part of my passion, less so nowadays. Because it was like ushering it in, and then it's like a trend, even with clothing. I remember, like, especially in my 20s and 30s, clothing in 40s. And even now, like, if trends hit, I'm out of there. I'll wear it until it becomes a trend, and then I stop wearing it. So like, it's just kind of this is personality level stuff maybe, but it is in my personality to like focus on something, and then it fills in from others, and then it becomes that threshold, and I leave it and then move forward and focus on the next. There's like this crazy capacity. It's not crazy, but it's crazy to me sometimes to look at it. And this is what I meant in the beginning when I was kind of floundering for words in the start of our conversation, because I didn't, you have to talk with me a while for me to really be able to express this. But this is what I meant when I said, I'm humble. I have a hard time expressing what it is I actually do, because it's hard for a person to hear, especially not for you, but especially if they're coming from ego. I said it one time on a podcast interview, and I remember it was a guy interviewer, and I remember him saying to me something along the lines of, I don't even know what, but it made me say back to him, oh, well, you would perceive what I'm saying as that if you were coming from ego. And it wasn't an attack to him. It was just, he was asking a question, but it made me realize the words I say about what I can do sometimes sound like as if I have delusions of grandeur.
Yeah. And that's hard too, isn't it? Because then you start to turn the knob down a bit and saying,
You got it right there. Thank you.
you know,
Pointing my finger in case you're just listening. Right at it, right at the screen. So got that. Yes, Pete.
what it is just that thing of going, okay, well, we'll just put that little part of me back in the cupboard and
Yes.
only show it on special occasions, right?
Is that why you've been asking some of the questions you've been asking? Because you've had a bit of a theme.
Yeah, I think, well, one, I think, it's not often we all get to come out and just be and just say, it's like I come here with no agenda, as I say. I start with a blank sheet, and what better way to have a conversation, rather than coming in and going, Alison, I've got 20 questions here, and God damn it, I'm going to get through that list. I don't give a monkey's. And I don't know. Where am I going with it? I don't know. I mean, but that's okay too. It's sit without agenda, without intention, and not, is that not, is that not if you can listen without judgment, is that not sort of a growing wisdom or something? I don't know.
Oh, it's supportive as all get out. I mean, I know I can be a listening space, and somebody, like, I remember I was just talking through something with a friend. She offered some advice in the beginning, saw that it was off the mark, and because I had said, no, that's not where I'm at. And then another piece of advice, no, that's not where I'm at. So my words made it sound like I was at a certain level, and they weren't effectively communicating, because she was hearing me in a way that, like, it sounded like one way, but it wasn't how everybody else means it. Is a way for me to express it here. So if so I just ended up talking. She gave me the space, and I came to the, a new recognition of something. So I feel like you're doing this really great space providing and listening, and I thank you for that. It's interesting. I also think you're intuitive, and I feel like you're kind of hearing you're perceiving something, and you're asking questions that I could see, if I chose to, has a theme to it somewhat, in that are you really expressing your true self? Are you able to? Do you ask that to everybody?
No, I just try and feel into what. I think whenever we're having a conversation, I used to have this running commentary, like, shh, I'm trying to do this conversation right now. I'm going to read this question no matter what. But it's that voice and going, I wonder, is that connected to that? And saying, don't just wonder it, ask it. And you could end up going down some magical rabbit holes. People going, how the hell do we end up here, right? But
Totally, yeah.
but you're following that thread and just going, listen, I don't know where this goes. Maybe it goes nowhere.
But that thread's intuitive, I'm suggesting too, because I just, before our time together, I was just dialing down what I was saying with the new landing page for that new program I'm announcing. And I just cut out a whole bunch of what I really wanted to say about courage this year, because it wasn't landing. So and it really was expressing an energy, a sense of, now is the time to really go for it, and make your asks bigger with what you desire to create, and really go for it, and just using words. Like, I couldn't, the energy of that, and it wasn't landing because people weren't ready for it yet. It's not what their egos are showing them they see that they want. And so I had to cut this part out that was me expressing, let's really go for it, and dial it down to where they're at.
Which is that in itself, and even your language has just demonstrated a massive incongruency between, this is what I really want and this is what I have to do, right? And then we rewind 5 minutes or 10 minutes, you're saying, as soon as it becomes status quo, I'm out of here. So is there not a fear that you fulfill your own prophecy? Then you kind of go, right, I need to make a radical shift here to change it again. I don't know. Maybe I'm seeing too much in the gap.
No, I don't know. I want you to say that, what you just said, in another way, please.
I think in it's the old expression of, don't hide your light under a bushel for anyone. It's that aspect. Those that need to come forward or need to step forward will step forward, and it's not.
Yep.
When you get to that point that actually, someone has to lead the field, or someone has to make the first step, whether it's right, wrong, or whatever. It's not about that. But you know, I get that we have to sort of, sometimes we have to appeal to the masses, but at the same time, as we say, the whole, if the mass consciousness is increasing, well, then you and yourself have to step up. You have to make that statement that
Yeah.
people are scratching the head going, not entirely sure, but I'm going to turn up and find out, right? You know, I'm here to
Yep.
learn. And then that then propels you into, you know, another energy level or something. I don't know. Does that make
Yes,
any
you
sense?
do. You do, and it does make sense. You do know, what you're talking about is an interesting question I've been in for a good couple of years, because it's not, because I have, if I'm listening intuitively to my audience on a free monthly call, I offered a free monthly call for over a decade, steadily, regularly, and in giving interviews all the way through this time. And doing talks, it's like giving programs, so tuning into my audience, I'm asking how can I best serve them. So I'm listening to their consciousnesses quietly, intuitively, and then I'm running and clearing to clear out the block, the limiting belief, so that that blocked down consciousness is able to then be activated to be consciousness at a conscious mind level. So you can use it, because the quotes are like 85%, at least, I think it's more like 95% of our daily choices are made from the back of the house consciousness, like the driving thing, example I give all the time. We don't say, once we've learned to drive, put the car in reverse, blah, 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 blah. We just do it. It gets lodged into the subconscious once we learn. And so we're making 95%, I think, of our daily choices from this habituated, non-conscious mind place. And so the more that we can come out, we can clear out more of that subconscious and unconscious locked down energy that happens from beliefs or conditioning or other sources, and bring them up to the front of the mind consciousness, the more mindful we can be as we make our choices. So the more choices we have, the more possibilities we have access to. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. It sort of, my fear is that it dilutes or it slows you down. You know, that thing of almost like, you know, it's like people who are you know, sort of unconsciously competent in themselves, and especially if you're intuitively connected and all the rest, it's like, I now have to break my state and I have to slow down to explain it to people. Wow, what a bore. It's like, do you know, that way? But I mean it very complimentary and sort of almost like to, but is it not counterintuitive? It's like, I now need to turn around and see how people could be perceiving this in the conscious form, you know, because they maybe haven't had this necessarily realization yet. Whereas if it was thought of through the sort of, through the connected state and saying, how do I need to teach this? Does that make sense? I feel like I've
Yeah.
shot down a rabbit hole here, but
Okay, so hold on, staying at the top of the rabbit hole on solid ground here. In welcoming the rabbit hole at the same time, but let's have the rabbit hole be productive. For now, anyway, just for now, you know, maybe the 30-minute extras would be the rabbit hole unproductive, which would be great. And then productive at a later point. I feel like what you just did to me is you just reflected to me, is you just reflected that, Alison, what I just watched you do was I just watched you start to explain something that was really boring, and it took you out of your happy zone. And that some people needed the explanation because they may not be in that connected conscious state. And so I dropped out of my joy zone to explain that in case there were some people that needed it. While what I really want to be talking about is and then where do we leave off before? Why did I start talking about that? But if we had more consciousness. So when, going back to what you were saying, like when I'm sitting there making a choice about whether to talk about what I know that will land for people and they'll know what I'm talking about, and that's dialing down. You said hiding light under bushel. Hadn't thought about hiding my light, but I was aware that it was a dimming down of my woohoo. What I was saying was, if I'm in the mode of serving people, I'm tuned into them, right? And I have been doing this habitually in this profession. So for me to then, I have been interestingly working with that dynamic so that I have been in the serving capacity. that's been my gig, and it's no longer okay for me. So I feel like the serving of the masses has completed in my karmic or my dharma wheel. Enough of the mass consciousness has raised. So I've been able to increasingly in the last couple of years pull back, let others take on that role, and then see what I really want to talk about. Meanwhile, my audience is huge. Like my email list is like, I don't know if it's like 13,000. So I don't know like who I'm talking to. You know what I mean? So that doesn't matter. One of the things I've been working on with I have 2 different business support people. And one of the things I've been working on is saying more about what I want to be talking about. But it's just interesting because like you said, you know, to come out of, you asked something like, is it almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy? And you took 2 different segments of what I had said, being the leader out in front. And then when in saying something really early on, and then once it hits mass consciousness or becomes a trend, I leave. And so it's almost like I am in that perpetual space. That's what you were feeding back to me,
exactly.
mirroring back to me.
But to me, that's because it's like, it's kind of driving with the accelerator and the brake on. It's like driving with, instead of having a little rear view mirror, you've got half the screen is behind you and half the screen's in front of you. In fact, it could be the other way around. Unfortunately, you're driving in reverse. That the past is in front of you and the future's behind you. It's that sort of going, okay, and I suppose the analogy I come up with is more like, be like a rocket. It's like the energy, you can only point one way if you want to successfully get into the outer atmosphere. You cannot be doing it. It can't be doing it sort of unfocused. But then there's more than one way to shift energy. You don't have to give parts of yourself through those connections. It can be, you can radiate it through your natural radiant being, and that's the thing. So if you are the greatest that you can be, you will naturally actually give off more energy than you could even just by dispelling it or passing it on a lower level.
Yeah, I've gotten logged down with a lot of words between writing and speaking, and a lot of nose to the grindstone delivery to get mass consciousness shifted. And so now here I am learning how to, or relearning how to have more presence and do what I want to do while serving in a way that is different now, because it's not the same that's needed anymore. It's different.
What an amazing problem to have, right?
Yeah, it's very unique being me.
There's the soundbite. It's very unique being me. God, yeah.
That's almost like what you gave me earlier that I love. Your reaction to that. It's very unique being me. We get trapped in our own truth chamber.
Yeah.
I love that. And I perceive it differently than like what's been happening online and in the government and what people have been talking about when, not being able to discuss or converse unless it's somebody who already sees the way they see. When you said that, I didn't hear it that way. And here again is another example of, and this might be some of the divide I've been really perceiving that's coming up in 2022. Like the speaking that both of us are acknowledging during this time together. If you're not conscious or if you're only at a certain level, you'll hear it this way. And if you are, then you'll hear it this way. So it's like,
and that's okay too, because that's the thing, right? Because no matter who, and this is the gift of speaking, right? Rather than trying to dial down to that level, it's saying, no, just trust that they will hear what they need to hear, and the next person will hear what they need to hear, and the next person will hear what they need to hear, right?
dude, I used to be like that, right? I came back from Asia, totally steeped in the yogic teachings, understanding that. I've been working with 2 American, in particular, 1 American business support person, and in my publishers, even of the books earlier on, speak at a 5th grade level, write at a 5th grade level, talk at a 5th, like deliver at a 5th grade reading level. Dumb it down. And so I hear, like, I'm not necessarily going for the masses. I'm going for people who can hold the light that is the highest for them. And I typically end up working with and have worked with leaders, like doctors, attorneys, speakers, accountants, business owners, nurses, like people on the front lines. And so I'm not necessarily for the masses. I don't have, like, I feel like in this field, in this position I'm in, I'm supposed to want to reach the masses. And I've never, like, even when I had my Voice America radio show, my ego could want that, because that's what I'm supposed to want, is to reach the masses. But I find it easier to just be reaching the people who I'm meant to be reaching. So like, I have these offers of different marketing gigs coming into me in my business of like, this is a way to reach more people. And I have consistently throughout the years been like, well, do I want to do that? And so then people on my team throughout the years, and this one I'm thinking of right now isn't any longer on my team as my support staff. She's like, of course you want to reach the masses, you're hiding. And I'm like, but I'm hiding in a certain way so that only the people who can get what I'm saying find me, so I can continue to say what I'm saying, you know. So it's really interesting navigating the marketplace or the consumerism of spirituality and staying of integrity, especially in America.
Yeah, it's hard to know, right? It's a challenge. It's fun. It's a journey. I want to be respectful of your time because we had a time promise here, so that's the.
Oh my God, you're not kidding! That flew by.
I'm going to ask you a few questions, if I may, just simply fire in the belly. Fire in the belly. If you were to try and describe it in 1 or 2 words, what would it be for you, Alison?
That laughter and just being alive, fully alive.
Wow, beautiful, beautiful. Where can people find out more, read your books, get in contact? What's the best place to send people?
Vibrationalupgrade.com. Alison with 1 L, middle initial J, and then K on Amazon, because there's an Alison K without the middle initial J, who does not write about what I write about. And then YouTube and Facebook, Vibrational Upgrade, free Facebook group.
Wow, beautiful. Is there a final message you'd like to leave with our listeners?
Just keep asking questions. Hold on. One more thing. Keep asking questions and that was, yeah, break it up, disrupt it.
Love it. Break the pattern. That's what it's all about. Oh, Alison, I suspect we could probably talk for never mind hours, days, but yeah, no, listen, I'll be respectful of your time. So thank you so much indeed for coming along. And I have a funny feeling we may talk again. So thank you.
I have that same funny feeling. Thank you. You were, it was a gift. It was a gift. Not only to have this time and the questions that you asked, but the space and the kindness and the generosity with which you offer this show of yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You too.